Today I'm going to show you how I made a levitating flower pot using magnets and how I incorporated it inside my computer case so that the flower pot always stays floating above. First, let's begin with the electronics. The flower pot floats with the help of permanent magnets and electromagnets, so it needs to be plugged in and works based on constant magnetic balancing. This gives the impression of levitation and allows us to do a lot of things, like in this case, the flying flower pot. But how does it work? Let's imagine we have a regular round magnet, and on top of it we place another magnet with the same pole facing down. You'll notice that they repel each other, and if we let go, they'll fall. Now let's imagine that instead of a regular magnet, on the bottom we have a circular magnet with a hole in the middle. On top, we place a smaller circular magnet without holes. We'll notice that the magnet is now repelled more uniformly, but even so, if we let it go, it would inevitably fall to one side at random. Technology now comes into play. Let's go back to the large circular magnet, but this time we'll put a sensor in the middle and 4 electromagnets around it. Now the sensor will detect which way our floating magnet is going to fall, since it detects orientation changes rapidly. And it will activate the corresponding electromagnet so that it repels the floating magnet from that side. And this, repeated infinitely, will result in a magnet that is continuously floating. Now that we know how it works, making the flower pot is super easy. Obviously, you could use this theory to assemble and mount all the electronic components, but it doesn't make sense since we can just buy the whole system already assembled. I'll leave the link in the description with worldwide shipping included. As you can see, my model is already a bit old, and it comes with a ceramic magnet ring. The new models already come with neodymium magnets, and we can choose how much weight we want them to support. But with 500 grams, we have more than enough to make the pot. Regardless of the model you buy, you'll see that it consists of the base with all the components and a circular magnet. That's the one that's going to stay floating and will support the weight of whatever we put on top of it. Actually, we can put whatever we want on it, like a toy or a small LED lamp, but in this case, we're going to put a flower pot. We need a flower pot that's uniform on all sides, because if it's not when we place it, it'll tip to the side and end up crooked. Also, with the plant we choose, we can make the flower pot out of any material we want, or just buy a flower pot directly. I made mine with 3D printing, and I'll leave the design in the description in case anyone wants to print it or have a shop print it for them. I'll also mention that this flower pot is 3D printed in white PLA from Grillon Tres. These filaments consistently produce excellent results, with each one surpassing the previous. At first, I wanted to do it with a model of an Aztec temple, but when I printed it, I wasn't completely convinced. Since the other pots I had on my desk also have an ancient era design, I printed a new pot which also had a similar design. And I really like this one. The plant I chose for this pot is an air carnation, or air plant. It has the characteristic that it feeds on the moisture in the air and doesn't need soil. We have 2 major advantages. First, we don't need to water it, which can sometimes get a bit complicated, especially if I'm going to put it on top of the computer. And the second, we won't have to add extra weight because of the soil. So I made a lid for the pot with a centered hole just big enough to put the plant in and keep it right in the middle. Going back to the base, we need to power it with the appropriate transformer and practice a bit at first, trying to balance the magnet over the base until it floats. If you see that the magnet is tilted or leaning to one side, what you need to do is get a small neodymium magnet and place it on the side that's leaning. This will give it an extra bit of repulsion and it will straighten up. You can stick this magnet on with anything, like a drop of glue. Now we can place the base underneath whatever we want. For example, we could put it under a desk or wood and have the plant floating on top, or make it a nice base. But I wanted to put it in the cabinet, So I decided the right place would be where the coolers go at the top. I only needed one of the two spaces, so I put it in the adjacent one. What I'm about to say next will likely make many people hate me. But my cabinet had a metal grate on top which affects the magnetic fields of the pot and makes it not work. So I had to cut a small square where the sensor and the electromagnets were. The grate was so thin that I just cut it with scissors. And once it was cut, I screwed the base in as if it were just another cooler. And don't worry, this case comes with a plastic mesh, so after putting on this plastic mesh, you can't even notice the cut. On the other hand, I know that having a magnet like this in the computer could be harmful, but it's not. The only component that could get damaged is the hard drive. And from the hard drives, those that used to spin, not even those because I already have an SSD. Anyway, this is also a myth, since studies have shown that even with huge magnetic fields, hard drives were not damaged. And on the other hand, the magnetic field from my stand is minimal. As you can see, at this short distance, it practically doesn't attract anything anymore. So my drives, if I had moving disks, are safe. I place the base's cable in such a way that it's not noticeable, running it behind the case and then to the outlet. Now attach the magnet to the pot. I made a hole in the pot where the magnet would fit, and I simply screwed it in and glued it there. It has to be exactly in the center so the pot doesn't tilt, and once it's glued, we can try it out. Carefully, we place the pot until it floats in its place, and that's it. Our pot is finished and floating in its final spot. It's important not to touch it too much or move it around too much, because while it can handle a little movement, too much can make the pot fall. And since the magnets are very powerful, something could end up breaking. This technique can be used to create various interesting products. If you enjoyed this, consider supporting me on Patreon. A monthly contribution grants you access to exclusive content and videos. If you enjoyed the video, remember to subscribe and like before it's released on the channel. See you next time. Bye.